Okay, so this term, green means go, has been thrown around a couple times with different support letters and has been brought up over the last couple of years with SACOG. And so I'll try to articulate the understanding of it the best I can, and definitely questions as I work through it are please do. And so the state of California is providing funding for housing. And the state of California has set these air quality standards in California. And so they've set this threshold to improve our air quality and reduce our emission standard for one of these emissions by 19%, which is a huge number. And so in order to get to that number, there's a real push to basically intensify density of housing, reduce vehicle miles traveled, so bring more housing and development to the core, and to make vehicle trips electrified. And so, so the Green Means Go program was a SACOG pilot program. There was an effort, it's an effort by SACOG in the 6-county region to basically say, okay, we have this goal, we have this target that we have to hit in order to keep funding to come through. And what's, in order to help get to this need, how can we incentivize agencies to incentivize, but also help agencies get there? And so they know that there's huge funding coming through the state for housing and different grant programs to help assist this. So what they've come up with is this Green Means Go, and then these green zones. Am I saying that right? What are the? I'm gonna butcher the green zones. And so the green zones are these areas with the program guidelines to help establish that meet their needs for infill, reduce vehicle miles traveled, that the state in the SACOG want to incentivize development, because that's going to help reduce the air emissions and meet their goals. And so I'm butchering this, I know I am. And so you got this huge need for housing in our area. I think you saw the numbers, 11,000 homes a year. 7,000 of those homes, they want to be in infill areas in that core. And so the thought is, how do we get people to, instead of building single family homes at the far edges of the sphere, how do we bring that in and have them build in the center? And so that's the push for the state for this climate action plans, and that's where the funding is going to try to incentivize that. And so in order to get there and actually get some money when it comes through, is the city's working with SACOG, set up these green zones, and then that way we position ourselves for funding as it comes in, which then aids our housing needs, and it aids our infrastructure needs, and it aids that entices the infill. And so that's why we came up with these proposed green zones, and they're not the whole citywide. Obviously, we would love to have aid housing everywhere within the city. But specifically why we came up with these two zones is based on the program requirements for this Green Means Go, and what we think matches the city best too. So we call the redevelopment zone, which is what I kind of consider the center of town. It's this kind of based on the central city specific plan. It has some areas in there that we think have some redevelopment spots. It has existing infrastructure. And so that's what we've called the redevelopment zone. And then you have this promotion zone, which has more open space, but it's directly adjacent to infrastructure that we think is more ready to go. And not saying that there isn't spots out here or just on the edge that we didn't capture, but we couldn't call out the whole city. And so in these zones are flexible where we could change them, but they have to be approved by the city council. And so what I'm asking for tonight is to approve these green zones, and then we submit those to SACOG. Then that way the city is a participant in the Greens Mean Go program as they work through the state to lobby for financing to help meet these emissions and see what opportunities we have. So with that, I butchered it pretty bad. I'm looking for a recommendation to adopt a resolution to nominate the two proposed green zones for SACOG, help SACOG establish the program and meet Sacramento Region's greenhouse gas reduction goals. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Moody. Questions from the council? A comment? Sure.
Ben, you butchered it. However, it's complicated. And believe me, being on that board, I've got to read and reread so many things. The intent being, we have to try to do our part to meet these GHG reductions. So SACOG came up with the program, Green Means Go, to help you, rather just throw the blanket over the entire city. If we can come up with specific areas that we can benefit from infill and reducing, vehicle miles traveled, all these buzzwords, they kind of blend together after a while. That's the intent. If we can do that, have a good program in place, get an area where actually shows some benefit to our city, then we have an opportunity to get funding to infill regardless is still a good thing. Reducing GHG is a good thing. Having people get out of their cars and on their bikes or their electric vehicles and get walking and whatnot to and from where they can live, work, and play, that's all a good thing. And if we can do that while doing our part as part of the region to reduce GHG, that's just all much more better. So it takes a lot of work to identify these things. We'll see how well we do. But it's a good thing if we can get it off the ground regardless. But we can lay the groundwork, get some developers in there, put some infrastructure in there, hopefully, to, we're going to reduce blight. We're going to reduce some of these vacant lots laying around and collect trash and shopping carts and everything else. And it really is a win-win, but it does take some work, and this is one of the first steps. So much appreciate the work that went into this alone. Again, I know it's confusing, but we'll see how we do. So thank you.
Anybody else? Public comment.
Sorry, I'll try to make this quick. This is Heather Essman again. So in all these presentations, there's one key section that seems to be constantly kind of gone around. And the same thing with the emergency situation. But how is that going to fit into all of this? Because I know that SACOG looks and probably works a little bit with LAFCO together. And at some point, the idea, because that's within your sphere of influence, it's supposed to be potentially incorporated into the city. There's a lot of area in there that hasn't been developed, and it's right smack dab in the middle of town, basically. So I don't know if we're at some point getting to a situation where we're running out of, not space, but we're supposed to have so many homes within this little area, and it might not actually fit. I don't know if that was even looked into, but if there's a way of us being able to say, can we kind of plan for the future and say that, I don't know how people keep planning around it, but nobody ever seems to be talking about it because it is within the sphere of influence. So I was just kind of curious about that, but also I don't see any kind of incentives for electric vehicle, like charging stations or anything like that. I don't know if they've considered things with that or whether it's, or any other monies, but because it would be great if we could have some incentives for some businesses or some hotels in order for hotels to switch over. I have traveled a few times, and it's really helpful to have, if you're going to go to a hotel someplace, then to have it there at the hotel. And if the hotels that we have here, they're not new. So if they don't have those facilities, it might be a good way to kind of approach them and see if they would be considering that if they had some sort of incentive in order to get something like that. But until we have like some of these types of incentives, I don't know how much of an impact this is going to have. And I get it, you're just trying to fill because SACOG's saying, this is what we want to have, and we want to have Green Means Go. But I don't know how much it's really going to help, and I'm hoping that the city itself is going to come up potentially with its own types of plans for some sort of a, whatever you want to call it. You don't have to call it a green revolution or something, but in general, thinking of technology and how technology is continuing, and a lot of car companies are switching over, that type of thing, so that the city itself has a concept, not just because SACOG says you have to have a concept, but that you have a concept that was kind of future-looking, and see if we can't improve just the city itself, not just because we're told to have a concept, but that somebody's at the city's actually working on a concept. Does that make sense? Okay, thank you.
It does, except that's not the case. We're not being forced to do it. We're participating because they have the money. So we're gonna play to try to get some money to do exactly what you just said.
Yeah, and I would just add that there's a housing element that we just adopted that forecasts for the sphere and for the city limits, the housing expectations. Absolutely, that's why we're participating in this, because we're looking at the incentives down the road that help with the electric vehicles, that help with the infrastructure, and it ties into the city council's endeavors for housing with the reduction in development impact fees, underground policies, different elements that we've been working on for the aid housing and those various benefits for the city.
Anybody else from the public? Anybody online?
No public comment.
No public comment. All right, back to the council for action.
I just want to also add, Heather, the council, we have the reduced impact fees in certain infill areas, so we've already stepped in that direction on it independently as well, just as a reminder. It's a good thing. Combine all that together, I think we can get some momentum going. And if there's nothing further, are we approving something?
You're adopting a resolution.
I move that we do so. All right.
Did I get a second? Second. Okay. Have a motion by Councilperson Harris, second by Vice Mayor Shaw on item number 12. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, item 12 passes unanimously.